Welcome to the U.S. latest news channel. Watch the video to the end to find out the current and breaking news about the Russian war in Ukraine. Anton Gerashenko, advisor to the Minister of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, posted a video on his social media account showing his elderly people being recruited into the Russian army after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced mobilization. Anton Gerashenko said that people who joined the Russian army after the announcement of mobilization in Russia were given rusty weapons. In the continuation of the speech, he said that Russian President Vladimir Putin, after announcing mobilization, gave rusty weapons to his own people and sent them to death, and called on the Russian people not to join the army. On May 27th, the British Ministry of Defense issued an information update on the Russian war in Ukraine, explaining that the T-62 and the weapons and equipment used by Russia in the war are behind modern technology, and therefore it is impossible for Russia to win the war. In the recent days, after Vladimir Putin announced mobilization in Russia, the provision of rusty weapons to the people participating in the mobilization also sat like a bomb in the world's media. After the mobilization of Russian President Vladimir Putin, the Russian people began to flee to different countries, and anti-war protests continue to be organized in Russia. During these protests, many Russian citizens were detained. Among the information that there are American citizens among those detained, do you think it is the right decision for Russian President Vladimir Putin to declare deck decommissioning? Russian Deputy Defense Minister Dmitry Bolbakov has been dismissed, the Russian Defense Ministry said in a recent statement. Russian President Vladimir Putin appointed Colonel General Mizintsev, who played a major role in the capture of the Russian city of Mariupol in May, to the vacant seat of Russian Deputy Defense Minister Dmitry Bolbakov. The Ukrainian authorities claimed that these appointments and changes made by the Ukrainian army were due to the territories occupied by the Russian army in the last 1 month and recaptured, especially the Kharkiv province. Ukrainian President Zelensky said in a statement that more than 2,300 square miles of land that was under Russian occupation had been retaken by the Ukrainian military. The Ukrainian Defense Intelligence Service reported that Lieutenant General Roman Berdnikov, who led the administration of the Donbass after the successful attack by Russian President Vladimir Putin's Kiev, has been dismissed. Roman Berdnikov was replaced by Colonel General Alexander Lapin. British Defense Intelligence said in a statement that Russian President Vladimir Putin has dismissed 6 generals in this way due to the fact that the Russian army is not advancing rapidly on the territory of Ukraine. The Ukrainian Security Service said in a statement that a theater used as a shelter was bombed by the Russian military and an estimated 300 civilians were killed. The mayor of Mariupol, Vadim Boychenko, claimed that 20,000 civilians were killed by the Russian army during the Russian army siege of the city of Mariupol, but this claim could not be confirmed because it was not based on any evidence. 300,000 people joined the Russian army after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced mobilization, but Russian soldiers who were on duty in the Russian army before the mobilization was announced continue to appear in social media posts where they disobey commanders' orders, walk around drunk, and exhibit erratic attitudes. Russian President Vladimir Putin recently announced that soldiers who disobey the orders of commanders or soldiers who flee from war will be punished. The Institute for the Study of War ISW, located in the United States, expressed that Russian President Vladimir Putin's announcement of mobilization is a serious and important problem for Russia. ISW, in the continuation of the statement it made, explained in the video that the reservists participating in the war did not have enough experience and that the Russian army gave rusty and old weapons to the reservists. Referendums in the Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions of Ukraine, by order of Vladimir Putin, began on Friday. In interviews given by people in the region to foreign broadcasting organizations, it was claimed that the people were forced and that violence was applied to the people by the Russian army. The British Ministry of Defense announced in a statement that the Russian military was concerned about the advance of the Ukrainian army and that the Ukrainian army had attacked 2 dams located on its path. In another report published today, the British Ministry of Defense announced with visuals that the Pechenny Dam was hit twice as the Ukrainian army continued its offensive after pushing the Russian army away from the vicinity of the city of Kharkiv earlier this month. The Russian military announced that the Karachunivsk Dam in central Ukraine was hit while defending the occupied city of Kherson against the Ukrainian army. The British Ministry of Defense said in a statement that Russia had hit the Pechenny Dam on the Estynets River on September 21st and 22nd using short-range ballistic missiles or similar weapons. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry said in a video it released that one of the 6 unmanned aerial vehicles circulating in the region was shot down, and announced that these unmanned aerial vehicles belong to Iran. In the continuation of the statement, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi targeted and accused Russian Nazism and civilians of having a stake in the killing. Ukrainian intelligence officials claimed that their goal at the meeting of Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu was to collect October 1st million troops, in addition to collecting 300,000 troops. This claim was denied by Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. While the world is afraid that Russian President Vladimir Putin will start a nuclear war, a Russian citizen said in an interview that the only thing that prevents Putin from starting a nuclear war is a personal fear of what will happen next. Anton Shalev, who fled Russia after Russian President Vladimir Putin made the mobilization announcement, said that Vladimir Putin would start a nuclear war if it was possible to start a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin had previously done trying to scare Russia with nuclear weapons in a speech that the West is nonsense, and has said explicitly warned Western countries that may use nuclear weapons if this attitude continues. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman said in a statement, the Russian army that are not under the full control of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson to add the result of the referendum after the lands, this land of the Army of Ukraine with the participation of the Russian Federation of a possible attack would be seen as a direct attack on Russia, and that Russian President Vladimir Putin indicated that he would not hesitate to use nuclear weapons in such a situation. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, who serves as deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, said that a possible attack by the Ukrainian army on the regions where the referendum will be held will be considered an attack on Russian territory. Ukrainian President Zelensky said in a statement that the Ukrainian army has captured a town in the eastern Donetsk region and that the Ukrainian army will retake all the territory if Russian President Vladimir Putin's army does not withdraw. Oleksiy Grimov, deputy head of the main operational department of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, said that the Ukrainian army recaptured Yatskivka, located east of the Oskil River. Chechen leader Ramazan Kadyrov threatened the women organizing the demonstration by saying that the protests organized by those who oppose the partial mobilization announced by Russian President Vladimir Putin are a crime, saying that I will send your relatives to war. A senior Russian commander has been seriously wounded and taken prisoner by the Ukrainian army, according to a statement by the Ukrainian military. 144. The commander of the Motorized Rifle Division, Major General Oleg Sokolov, was seriously wounded and taken prisoner by the Ukrainian army during a raid on a headquarters near Svatov in the Luhansk region, which is partially occupied. A total of 12 Russian generals have been killed by the Ukrainian army since Russian President Vladimir Putin launched an invasion of Ukraine on February 24th. The Ukrainian army has announced that the number of generals killed so far is 12. We continue to report the news from the 171st day of the Russia-Ukraine war. The Ukrainian army destroyed the Russian train carrying military equipment and ammunition belonging to the Russian army at the Brevlik train station in the Kherson region. This event is considered one of the greatest achievements of the Ukrainian army in the war to date. The destruction of the train by the Ukrainian soldiers caused great sadness to the Russian army. According to the allegations, the Russian army train is said to be carrying very valuable military equipment of the Russians. According to the information, the value of the equipment inside is about $200 million. According to the Ukrainian soldiers, the destruction of this train, which carries military equipment of high material value, is very important in changing the course of the war. The Ukrainian military command announced that 8 senior officers of the Russian army and 72 Russian soldiers were killed in this operation. Chechen soldiers support the Ukrainian soldier in the war. He launched an attack on Kharkiv to show his support for Ukraine in the war of liberation of Ukraine from Russian occupation. The Chechen people were treated badly by the Russian government for a very long time. Most of his soldiers fought for the liberation of Ukraine, and the operation was led by Kadyrov. The church and people are more fragmented today than ever before to cooperate with Putin. Troops from Titania, conscripted by Ukraine, took part as an important force in the decisive battle in Kharkiv, where Russian soldiers retreated. Chechen forces and the Ukrainian army are currently fighting side by side. Chechen soldiers were greeted with great joy by the Ukrainian army. Ukrainian leader Zelensky made several public statements about the church and its soldiers that Chechen soldiers could change the course of the war. To what extent do you agree that Chechen soldiers are currently fighting on the Ukrainian side? What are your thoughts on the Ukrainian army's chances of surviving the occupation? The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights claims that Israel attacked some places in the Zainab region around Damascus and destroyed a workshop using Iranian technology. Unmanned aerial vehicles were also produced in this workshop. The last remaining arsenal was bombed. Russian authorities were aiming to buy products made in Iran here. Russia's drone production fell behind other countries in the world. Ukraine relies on Turkey for unmanned aerial vehicles. Turkey's drone technology means superior combat capabilities and lower cost than land. According to reports from Ukraine, it is stated that Russia spends about $400 million a day on the conflict with Ukraine. Israel's embargo against Russia resulted in significant destruction. Russia will need drones for areas it has recently gained the upper hand. Faced with this threat in some areas where Ukraine has withdrawn, will Russia go on the offensive? Will Israel be able to withstand Russian pressure? Russia is trying to hold the Black Sea as the explosions reduce Russia's power to advance in the region. The problems in the Crimean Peninsula affected Russia a lot. The Russian ammunition depots in the Zaiku region of Crimea exploded. It shows how the Russians